Welcome to this very special episode of the Geotechnical Engineering Podcast. In today's episode, we'll be talking with Josh Monroe, Vice President of Safety, Quality, Compliance at GeoStabilization International. We'll be talking about geohazard mitigation and the importance of safety programs in high-risk environments. He'll be sharing his expertise on how GeoStabilization International implements safety programs and how they've used innovation to advance safety measures. We'll also be discussing the common hazards found on job sites, training programs, and the future of the geohazard mitigation industry. I'm your host, Jared Green, and I'm excited to be bringing you another episode of the Geotechnical Engineering Podcast. But before we get started, here's a quick word from our sponsor for today's episode, that being PPI.
Before we dive in, we'd like to recognize our sponsor for this episode, PPI, a leader in engineering exam prep for the FE and PE exams. PPI provides expert prep courses and study resources designed to help you pass the FE and PE exams the first time. PPI's live online courses include hours of lectures, problem-solving demonstrations, exam strategy sessions, office hours, and a passing guarantee. Check out PPI today at ppi2pass.com to see all the options available for FE and PE exam prep. Now let's dive into today's episode.
Josh, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm great, Jared. Appreciate you inviting me on.
Excellent. I've been really looking forward to this conversation. And it would be helpful if we just, a little bit more about you. So I understand you've been at GeoStabilization International for about 7 years. If you could tell our listeners a little bit more about your company and what is your role and what is it that you do on a daily basis?
Yeah, so as far as the company, GSI is a geohazard mitigation company. We operate throughout North America and New Zealand, specialize in emergency landslide repair, rockfall mitigation, and grouting. And then my role is the safety director within the organization. I oversee safety and fleet compliance, lead an incredible team that's spread all throughout the country, and develop and implement safety practices that align with the company core values and continue to grow our safety culture.
That's great. That's great. Now, safety is something I'd be curious. Did you learn about what you're doing now? Did you learn about this in school, or is this? I mean, how did you get to the point where you could be an expert in safety? How does one get to that point in their career?
Yeah, so I'd like to say that I just had a knack for it, right? And but in reality, I just kind of fell into it. Well, my roommate in college at the time, he was in occupational safety and health, and at first I was like in criminal justice, and I guess probably watched too many action flicks where you wanted to work for the FBI, kick in doors and get the bad guys kind of thing. But that wasn't the path. So safety intrigued me. The more that I got into it, kind of did align with my personality. So went to Murray State University, and they have a great occupational safety and health program. So graduated with a degree in that.
Well, that's great, and it's so important. I mean, we a number of companies have either a safety culture or safety is a part of the things that they do, right? And a lot of what we do is very dangerous going on construction sites. So, I've found in my career that safety is probably one of the most important things about what we're designing and what we're inspecting, what we're providing oversight for, because you come to work, you should be able to go home, right?
Exactly right. The exact same
so
way
important.
that you showed up at work, right? And
Yeah.
that's a critical part of it. You can the regulation and all that stuff, but ultimately it's the impact to people's lives.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So thank you for your service. And I understand that you served in the United States Army. So thank you for your service to our country as well. How did that prepare you for your current role? Like, was there anything you did in the Army that made you think about safety? Like, how does that tie in?
Yeah. So out of high school, I went into the military. And then, through the Army and then the Kentucky State National Guard, that's why I went to college during that time. Both really align with following and understanding regulations, right? you got set standards or minimum expectations, so kind of the rules that need to be followed. Um, and then, another critical thing that carried over from the military into, what I do professionally now is just the attention to detail, right? Just being able to quickly evaluate a situation and react, right?
Yeah.
And come up with solutions quickly, because with our line of work, it's fast paced, right? So
Yeah.
you gotta move quickly.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think one of the things that's so interesting is that conditions change very quickly. Where you're talking about a brace excavation or a drilled shaft, it's like, the conditions at the time of your toolbox talk 7:05 a.m. or 700, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then it rains, right? And it's like you have to be able to react. Like, what happens now? We have slip and fall hazards. So you're right. You have to always be on top of these things as they change. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and what we do, like every situation isn't the same,
Mm-hmm.
like so not only to the conditions, the daily conditions, but job site to job site, the conditions change.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And especially if you cover a large area, right? The conditions in the Northeast might be different from the Pacific Northwest as far as like the things that have been happening or the trends that we're seeing on a given procedure. So it's a lot to be on top of.
Yeah, it's just the weather, right? Like we work outside.
Yeah.
The weather causes some of the slides or repairs that we have to work on, and it might be high heat in the southeast and still snowing, up north. So it
Yeah.
definitely keeps you on your toes.
Yeah. All right. All right. And I see you wrote an article, Josh, called Safety Program, where you talked about how GSI has been working with student teams to design a perimeter protection system for remote site projects where fall hazards are common. Can you tell us a little bit more about the project, the article, and that safety program as a whole?
Yeah, so it's a capstone project with the Colorado School of Mines, and probably one of the coolest things that I got to be a part of is
Hmm.
we went to School of Mines, and there's a lot of other companies that was there set up, and you actually had to present your issue to the students, and as part of their graduation, they had to complete project, and then they selected you, right? Based off of the challenge, and they felt if they could bring value to the situation. So we deal with a lot of shoulder work and create leading edges whenever we install our solution. We had perimeter protection up in place, but we're trying to think of how can we rapidly deploy a system while utilizing things that we have on our trucks and trailers,
Mm.
materials that we already have. That means there was a little bit more detail in it, but just for the sake of the time, that's kind of the gist of it. And those students took that and came up with a solution that could easily be installed on our soil mills, right? Can be deployed within minutes, and meet all the requirements in regards to regulation to ensure we're compliant with those standards. So it was super cool to be a part of. We really showcased it in like the article that you're referencing, and just to a lot of our clients as well. It looks extremely professional. So that group did a great job, and to add to it, it was during COVID too. So
Oh,
there
wow.
was other challenges. Like we literally did the presentation, selected the crew.
Mhm.
COVID happened, and the students still stood up to the challenge and delivered. So it was really cool.
That's great. Good preparation for the real world, right?
Yeah. Yep.
That's great. We'll see if we can get that article in the show notes so folks can click on that and learn a little bit more. Now, let's see. So, you talked about geohazard mitigation, and obviously, that's a very high risk environment. What are some of the more common job site hazards that are associated with this type of work?
Well, I mean, the geohazards themselves, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you're faced with multiple variables, things still moving, like you made the comment about conditions changing. If there's a weather event, if it rains, it can change that. So the pre-planning portion is probably the most important factor that we have to consider.
Mm.
And then change conditions. The other thing too is like remote locations. It's not always in high populated areas and are conveniently located. There's a lot of times that we're in areas with no cell phone service, and completely disconnected with the outside world. So like that lone worker approach,
Mm.
and making sure that we can maintain contact with our crews. Traffic control, right?
Mhm.
There's a do a lot of work for DOTs or roadside, so mitigating that risk, as far as exposure from the public with vehicles, overhead and underground utilities. A lot of power lines,
Mhm.
fiber optic lines, gas lines, and we're drilling into the ground. So being diligent as far as understanding, where those lines are located, and change our design to those variables. The other thing too is that just because it's in one place, the utility underground is in one place, doesn't mean that it's like that continuously through the project, because the ground has shifted, right?
Yeah.
So the landslides occur, so it could be feet off. So another big challenge that we have, falls. We're working from heights, especially on our rockfall crews, and then working around equipment. There's a lot of heavy equipment associated with our projects, and specialized equipment that we have. So
Got it. So the planning is very important, and then the implementation, and you're probably checking and reassessing all the time for each one of these activities, for each one of these projects.
yeah, as a project team, we get together pre-construction aspect and discuss, what we know, review, any job site photos or videos that have been taken, put those controls, and then, as the crew arrives on site, then there's another evaluation process from a site-specific safety plan,
Mhm.
and then daily, like we call it WIN plan, which
Win
stands
plan.
for what's important now,
Okay.
because it changes, like you said, right? Like
Yeah.
what was important yesterday isn't as important as right now. So when you discuss it, identify it, mitigate it, and make sure the crews are aligned, know how to, address the conditions.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Now, how do organizations like Geostabilization implement safety programs? How does one? There might be some folks listening in that don't even have one. Like maybe it's like a newer firm or somebody that's just catching wind of this. Like, how does one implement a program like this?
First, it's engaging our employees, right? Like it's easy for me to be like, hey, we're gonna do this. That doesn't mean that people are bought in. So engaging our employees to provide input
Mhm.
and help generate those solutions, right? That creates that buy-in and support once the practice or initiative is implemented. Um, just that overall approach generates ownership in the safety program. It's not mine, right? Like I
Yeah.
just kind of I guess the choke point. It funnels through me,
Mhm.
but it's all facets of our organization that truly engages in it.
Got it. And once you have the buy-in, then it's not just your plan; it's our plan, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
and that's exactly right. It's like, hey guys, we said we were going to do this.
Yeah.
You know, um, you always want to emphasize the importance of why. But just that approach has been so successful, and it's really cool because at some point, like I'm not even talking, like our employees are, our family members are, they're bringing the solutions. It's like,
Mhm.
hey, here's a challenge. It's very similar to that capstone. Here's our challenge,
Mhm.
and they're bringing us solutions on how to resolve it. So
Oh, that's great.
at times, it makes my job easier when they do that.
Well, you transform the culture. When you have a safety culture, then everybody's thinking about, well, how can this be done in a way that's more safe, right? Then all of a
Yep.
sudden, it's not just the accidents that get reported; it's the near misses, right? We're focusing in on those kind of things. How can we make sure that we're cutting these down? So, I'd love it if you could talk a little bit more about your training programs. I think that'll be helpful for folks that are listening in or watching.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it on the job training, right?
Mhm.
You're not going to get the understanding of how things completely work, and what's the requirements. So, our field leadership or frontline leadership is very diligent on ensuring the guys get the proper time, or I guess mentorship, or oversight to ensure they know how to do their job properly. But then we also, like from a safety aspect, we do monthly in-person safety meetings. And the topics are developed based off of our trends or experiences
Mhm.
that we're seeing. The cool thing is, and it's not just my team that's out there. relaying that message. A lot of our engineers, project managers, obviously our superintendents, frontline leadership are responsible to do that. But that reinforces either new initiatives or reinforces old ones. The other thing too is throughout technology, right? Like we're using Zoom on this, but Microsoft Teams is really what we utilize. So we'll do weekly or biweekly meetings with with our crews. But if it's it could be respiratory respiratory protection, just whatever topic that that we need to cover with the guys. Then we also have LMS system where like a learning management system through Cornerstone that we can actually assign, like say it's annual refresher trainings or MUP or forklift training refresher, hazard recognition, whatever, because we're so spread out. And it's not like, hey, everybody come into the training trailer and do this PowerPoint. It's we got guys all throughout the United States, so we really have to rely on technology a lot.
Oh, that's great. That's great. When we talk about technology, I'd be curious to hear if there have been, a usage of innovation to advance safety measures. Are you seeing anything there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I kind of break that down into two different groups. One external, and we kind of talked about it with the, partnering with outside groups like the Capstone Project, right? I mean, that's what they came up with. It's something you can go buy at the store, right? The other one too is Virginia Tech. I said traffic control or traffic is one of our big risks. So the guys out east worked with Virginia Tech and testing a solution where it fits into a vest, and then the traffic control devices has sensors on it. So if the employee is approaching that device, then it sends off alarm to let them know that they're close to their protection, right?
Wow. Okay.
And then also there's a setup if in case a vehicle crosses the sensor and it enters into their zone, right? Their safety zone. So just seeing opportunities like that to help advance stuff. It's exciting, right? Makes your job really fun. Then the other side of it internally is conducting, like, you ever heard of Kaizen, right? Kaizen's a Japanese term for like good change or improvement.
Okay.
So we have safety Kaizen. We brought everybody in, not just safety professionals, but like frontliner operations as well. And it's like, here's our trends, here's our biggest areas that we see, and like how do we improve, right? So continuously improve on throughout our experiences, and then root cause analysis as well. We used a couple of platforms, Sologic, Think Reliability. So we have an event, this happened because of this. You go through the whole 5 whys, cause and effect, and each box indicates an outcome. And if you pluck that away or that condition away, then the event doesn't occur. Wow. Right. Yeah. So and then just looking through like, how do we completely abate these hazards? How do we completely remove it? Because if it's gone, then nobody gets hurt. Yeah. The other thing too is something that was introduced to us, and I'll just share it. It's called biomimicry. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I haven't.
Like looking at nature for solutions.
Okay.
Yeah. So that there's these really cool like treads, because like slip strips and falls, you can think it's kind of our exposure working on slopes, and there's this new technology that's coming out with like treads on the bottom of your shoes that mimics snake scales. Wow. So like whenever if you're flat, you can't get tripped up on it, but as soon as you arch or whatever, the scales or the treads grab onto the surface. So
that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. So biomimicry.
I thought you were going to say something about like billy goats or something like that, because I know on slopes they get to just scale right up.
Yeah. But I mean, that same,
right? There's something
same
in
example.
there.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Some PhD student is listening and they're going to get funding because of that.
Hopefully
they're
taking notes. Yeah. Hopefully they're not asleep by now.
Yeah. Oh, that is cool. That is cool. All right. Well, before we take our break, last piece of advice you want to give to next generation of geohazard mitigation professionals listening on out there?
Yeah, simply, and this is my approach that I've taken for both the GSI or just throughout my career is get to know the work, get to know the people, right?
Mhm.
You immerse yourself in an environment where you just continuously learn about your business, right? Like, yeah, I do safety, but I want to know how everything operates, right?
Mhm.
And get to know the people. Like relationships are huge in this business.
Bro.
So if you get to know how each individual works, operates, you can conform your message, right? Which is exactly what I do. Like I'm pitching an idea. It's right. It's not something that you can grab onto, but it's an idea that you have to commit to. And understanding how not an individual works or how to present that to them makes the buy-in or the acceptance a lot easier.
Oh, that's great. That's great. That's a good note to pause on. So we're going to come back in just a minute and close this one out on Josh in our career factor safety end segment. All right, welcome back, everybody. It's our career factor safety end segment. In geotechnical engineering, just like many disciplines of engineering, it's important to incorporate a factor of safety into your design. But what about if we ask the question of incorporating a factor of safety into your career? So today, of course, we're speaking with Josh Monroe of GeoStabilization International, or GSI. And Josh, when you think about the career you've had, it's a very successful career, and you look back in your career, what's something you implemented in your career to give yourself, let's call it a factor of safety in your career?
Yeah, I would just say, what can set me apart from everybody else, right? Whether it be through certification, education. Um, the other thing too is, for the organizations that I worked for, even GSI, is asking for opportunity to take on new challenges, right? Like, yeah, I do safety, but that doesn't mean that that's the only thing that I can, right? So it's getting involved with other groups, right? Everybody has challenges, so it's how can you help problem solve some of those things. That would probably be it, is how to help the company solve problems.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, Josh, thank you so much for coming on and for sharing all these great insights with us. You shared some really great information and advice I know is going to be helpful for our listeners. Now, if somebody's listening in or watching, they're like, wow, I wish I could reach out to them. Is there an email address you want to share, or are you on social media? How can people find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn, just Joshua Monroe, and my mug should pop up. You should be able to see me. Yeah, I mean, if there's questions, though, joshua.monroe@gsi.us. Should be more than happy to answer emails.
Sweet. All right. Thanks for coming on. That was great.
All right, Jared. Appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed the episode today. We would love to hear your feedback, comments, and/or questions. Please feel free to go to geotechnicalengineeringpodcast.com, where you'll find a summary of the key points discussed in today's episode, that being episode 75, as well as links to any of the resources, websites, or books mentioned during this episode. Until next time, we wish you the very best in all of your geotechnical engineering endeavors. Peace.